What is up, everybody? Matt Moda here to give you my favorite NFL player prop picks. We're talking Thursday night football, Seahawks versus Cardinals. Kind of a good game, kind of not really. But I'm going to have two NFL player prop picks for you guys to lock in for this game on Thursday night, one of which we're taking a slight ladder climb as well. Very confident in what we have for this game on Thursday in the two plays that we have. Before we get into that, I do have to do a recap. So I'm recapping all of week 3, Thursday night football, Sunday, Monday night football. It was really, really bad. I don't really have any way around it. You see a lot of red on the screen here. Some play like, the CeeDee Lamb getting injured. Not much I can do about that. That happens. DJ Moore, I had him 5 and 6+ receptions. He had 4 receptions, didn't have a single reception in the first half, just if you got going a little bit early. Drake London had 6 receptions in the worst quarterback performance I've ever seen for Michael Penix Jr. Matthew Golden, I think in hindsight on this one, I really do regret taking the anytime touchdown. I really wanted to back Matthew Golden, and the first market that was out was the anytime touchdown. And I think if I'm being a little bit self-reflective, I think I got a little bit too trigger happy on that one. And I took the anytime touchdown instead of waiting because he hit his receptions prop, his yards, and his longest reception as well. So that's a mistake on my end. I'll own that. The Lad McConkey, the best CLV I've ever gotten in my life. He's just not involved in the offense, so can't say that was bad luck. And then Zay Flowers, kind of the same thing here. Not the CLV part, but I loved the matchup for him against the Lions, and it ended up being Mark Andrews, who was heavily involved for the Ravens passing offense. So certainly not saying that I was unlucky or anything like that. The only one that I can really say was unlucky was the CeeDee Lamb injury, which injuries are part of the game. You have to accept that. So all in all, down 4 units in week 3 for the entire week. Again, Thursday through Monday. Really bad. On the entire year brings our total losses. We're down about 2.5 units. We were up in week 1, and then we've been down the last 2 weeks. Now, week 2 was slightly down about a unit, and then week 3 obviously was very bad. Kind of interesting, in last season, we had a really good week 1. Then we had a really bad weeks 2 and 3. So history is somewhat repeating itself there. Hopefully, we had an awesome week 4 last year. Hopefully that continues into this week as well. I am very confident in the 2 plays that we have that we can get right into. So these player props, I use Props Madness a ton to help me find them. I put a link to Props Madness in the description of the video, so if you want to check them out, you can. You'll see how I use Props Madness, but the first play is exactly who you see on the screen here. It's Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and I'm taking his receiving yardage prop over. Now, I locked Jaxon Smith-Njigba in when his over-under was like 70.5. I got him 80 plus for plus 135. That is my official play that I sent out to my Tails account, was Jaxon Smith-Njigba, again, 80 plus receiving yards. Obviously, that's no longer available. I would still take his over-under at 81.5, and you can also just take the ladder to 90 plus as opposed to 80 plus. So obviously, it's a little bit more risky, but you're at least still getting the plus money play. I just think that it's a really, really good situation for Jaxon Smith-Njigba. And I mean, this is going in the category of not fading recent results. My next one is, this one is not. He's just been fantastic, and I actually think he could have been even better. Week 1, he played 77% of the snaps, had 13 targets. That's awesome. That's exactly what you're looking for. Week 2, the Seahawks won by 14. Granted, that game was a little bit closer. It got out of hand at the end with the muffed kickoff situation with the Steelers, but still had 10 targets, caught 8 of them, played only 65% of the snaps. And then last week, complete blowout. They won that game by 31. It was like double digits within the first 2 drives of the game. That game was never even close. Only ends the game with 6 targets, 5 receptions, played less than half the snaps. So even getting 96 yards, playing less than 50% of the snaps, like I said, there's some meat left on the bone for Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and he has just been fantastic. I mean, you look at his numbers here. He's second in terms of receiving yards per game. Only Puka Nacua is ahead of him. In terms of targets per route run, he's the second best. Again, only Puka Nacua is ahead of him. You look at other stats, yards per route run. How many yards does he gain per route run? Second best in the NFL. Actually, Luther Burden is ahead of him, who just had like a 90-yard touchdown basically last game. And you want to go even deeper into the nerd stats. Everybody knows I love getting deep into these nerd stats. First read targets. This means, so this is combining first read and design targets. So design target is a little bit different than a first read. It's like a play that was specifically designed for this player, a wide receiver screen, something like that. A first read means the quarterback's going through his progressions and he's the first read on the play. Guess who is the fourth in the entire NFL? Jaxon Smith-Njigba, 26 first read targets. Even better than that, design targets is exactly what you want. Guess who is tied for number 2 in the NFL? Jaxon Smith-Njigba. This is all to say he has been fantastic. And he has a fantastic matchup on Thursday night. Now, I'm recording this on Tuesday, so if injury news, whatever happens after this, you'll know why. But the Cardinals, they have a ton of injuries in their secondary. They're totally banged up. It's still the case on Thursday as well. And because of that, they've allowed the second most passing yards per game in the entire NFL, 275. Only the Cowboys are ahead of them at 300. They have been getting torched through the air. And even more specific than that, one thing that's really, really cool about Props Madness is it kind of looks at like similar players and how they perform. 5 of 7 similar wide receivers to Jaxon Smith-Njigba have gone over their receiving yardage prop. And what I like is all 3 number 1 receivers have gone over. Chris Olave had 54 receiving yards. His over-under was 51.5. Ted McMillan had 100 receiving yards. His over-under was 61.5. So he smoked the over. Ricky Pearsall had 117 yards. His over-under was 66.5. Once again, smoked the over. So we see that these number 1 receivers have just annihilated their over-under against Jaxon Smith-Njigba. And he's just been fantastic. He's been incredibly good. And the last stat that I'll give you, if you really want to get into the nerd stuff, is the type of coverage that the Cardinals play lines up perfectly with Jaxon Smith-Njigba. You see they play like too high, middle of the field open rate. Basically, it's 2 high safeties, mostly playing towards the edge, towards the sideline. They leave the middle of the field open. That's perfect for Jaxon Smith-Njigba. The Cardinals run that at the 7th highest rate in the NFL. Granted, 57%. Granted, the Vikings at 75%. Obviously, that's a pretty big difference. But still, 7th highest, 57% is pretty high. And even more specific than that is cover 4. That's how the Cardinals play defense. It's a classic Jonathan Gannon thing. They don't let themselves get beat deep. They play this really deep coverage so they don't get beat deep. They keep everything in front of them, and they're willing to sacrifice the short throw. It's rare you see them get beat over the top, which is what happened with Ricky Pearsall last week. But cover 4 is kind of that type of coverage. They play it at the highest rate in the NFL. Now, I can't get per yard route run stats against cover 4. That's not a stat that's available to me. I can get yards per route run against too high coverage, which we know the Cardinals run at the 7th highest rate in the NFL. Jaxon Smith-Njigba has 3.9 yards per route run against that type of coverage. That's the 7th highest in the NFL. And you look at some of the guys above him. Number 1 is Jaylen Warren on who hasn't seen a ton of it. And then a tight end who's got 5, 6 targets on the year. So it's really the 5th best of wide receivers. Tucker Kraft is a little bit ahead of him. But it's really, really good, which is all you need to know. It's really, really good. So even though Jaxon Smith-Njigba has gone over the first 3 weeks of the NFL season, the matchup is just too good for him, and he gets such consistent work that I feel good about him going over again. So that's our first play, Jaxon Smith-Njigba. Technically, what I got was 80-plus receiving yards. I would still take him over 81.5, and I would still take him at 90-plus as well. Next up, we're sticking in this receiving market, and we're going with Trey McBride, and we're taking him over 6.5 receptions. Now, when I locked this in, it was plus 116 at DraftKings. That has now moved, but I did check. It's plus 105 at Bet365, which I would still take it at that plus money price. Even minus 105 isn't terrible either. And then I would also take, I'm also taking 8+ for a half unit. So that's the play here. Now you're going to look at Trey McBride and you're going to say, well, he's only hit it, he's never hit it at all this year. He's 0 for 3 in terms of getting 7 receptions. Look at how he ended last year. He hit 7 or more receptions in 8 of the last 12 games, and he got 8 or more receptions in half those games. And the odds on him at 8+ receptions was like plus 210. So it was a really, really good price considering he hit it at a 50% rate. And you look at his metrics from last year, like he got almost 10 targets per game, was really, really good. Hasn't quite been the case this year. He's averaging 8 targets per game, but he's still come close. I mean, we're looking at him to get 7+ receptions in the 3 games, 6, 6, and 5. So I do think that there is a little bit of value on the reception total for Trey McBride at the price we're getting it. This is a classic fade recent result type of situation. And McBride has still been really involved in the Cardinals offense. Like, we're looking at all of the Cardinals this year. Target share leads the team. Target percentage. Targets per route run. Technically, he's fourth, but Elijah Higgins is ahead of him. He's only gotten 5 targets on the year. James Conner, the running back, is out for the year, and then DeMarco's got 1 target, so he's and has run 2 routes, so a little bit of an outlier there. But he's been really heavily involved. And you look at the same type of nerd stats that I was looking at before with Jaxon Smith-Njigba. First read targets, Trey McBride leads the team by far. You want to go to design targets. Trey McBride is tied with James Conner. Those are all running back screens. He's still double the next closest player, which is Greg Dortch. And you compare those numbers league-wide. Like, how does his first read target versus design targets compare league-wide? You just go to select all. We're looking at every team in the NFL. He's like top 15 to top 20 in both of those metrics. Now, he's not among the tops, but most of these are wide receivers, right? If you look at like among tight ends, it's actually a lot better. But his 4 design targets, again, that's going to be top 18 in the NFL. And his first read targets, which was 20, is top 17 in the NFL of all players. You limit that to just tight ends, and it looks a lot better for Trey McBride. You look at it in terms of tight ends, in terms of first read targets, he's 3rd. Jake Ferguson, Juwan Johnson are ahead of him. And then you look at designed targets, he is 2nd. Jonnu Smith, who Arthur Smith just cannot quit, is ahead of him. So even though he hasn't quite been the reception monster this year that he was last year, his workload for the Cardinals is still fantastic, as is the matchup, which is the last thing that I want to talk about here. 3 of the 4 tight ends against the Cardinals have hit their reception prop over. The only one that missed was George Kittle. Look at the offensive snaps. If you hover over him, you can see George Kittle only played 28% of the snaps in week 1. You want to know why? He got hurt in the first quarter. So you're telling me he had 4 receptions on an over-under of 4.5, and he got hurt in the first quarter? You can pretty confidently say he would have gone over that number, which would have been 4 out of 4 in terms of hitting the over against the Seahawks. And then another cool thing you can do on Props Madness, if you hover over the matchup, it gives you a ton of data. So you see the Seahawks have allowed, they're 28th in terms of receptions, 28th out of 42, or 32, so the 5th most targets allowed. You see a lot of green. What I want to highlight here is defensive rank versus position, which is how this team you're playing guards the position you're looking at. And you see that number there is 25, meaning like 7th, 8th most receptions allowed to tight ends. And you can actually filter by that. So if we filter defensive rank versus position, and we just look at teams in the bottom half, and we look at the beginning of last season, so we're taking out everything, looking at the beginning of last season, it's a 7 of 11 games since week 1 of last year. He missed it in the first 2. It's actually 7 of 9, hitting 7 or more receptions against teams in the bottom half of tight end reception props. And you just look at like how many times did he get? 8, 6 of 9. That's a very nice number. And then the very, very last thing I'll mention, he has played the Seahawks last year. He played the Seahawks twice. Guess what? 12 receptions, easily would have cashed the ladder. 7 receptions would have cashed the first leg of the ladder. 14 targets, 15 targets. He had a combined 29 targets in 2 games against Seattle last year. Same defensive coordinator, same defensive coach, or excuse me, same head coach, same defensive coaching staff. All that stuff is the same, and he smoked the over. So I like Trey McBride a lot in this one. I like JSN as well, and that's all we got. So 2 official bangers, technically 3 if you count the ladder, but it's Jaxon Smith-Njigba. What I locked him in at, which is what I track, 80 plus receiving yards. But again, I'd still take over 81.5. We'd still take 90 plus as well. And then Trey McBride, 7 and 8 plus receptions as well as our 3 plays. Appreciate everybody for watching. Make sure to like the video, comment, subscribe. Check out Props Madness if you want to. I kind of walked you through how I use them. Ton you can do on Props Madness. They're fantastic. And then I also put a link to my Tails account as well, which is just where I send every play out. So if you want to watch, or if you want to tail, but you don't want to watch the YouTube videos, that's for you. Again, thank you everybody for watching. Make sure to bet responsibly and have a good one.